Namaste friends. Today we will talk about planet Saturn or Graha Shani as it is called in Sanskrit, and would study its effects when it is placed in different houses in a Vedic astrology chart. Shani, or as we call it Shani Shaneshcharaye, is a slowest planet and it takes 30 years to complete one cycle of the zodiac. If we talk about its story, then Saturn is son of Lord Surya and his second wife, Chaya Devi. Shani is also called Karam Faldata because it is the Karaka for duty and responsibility. Saturn can be a very hard taskmaster if one neglects one's duties and responsibilities. Saturn is also called Mandgate Tubhyam because it works very slowly, and even if it is well placed in a chart, it delays effects. I mean, if it has to give good also, then it would delay that also. So, being a slow moving planet, it gives effects slowly, but whatever it gives in life is permanent. So we can say that it brings stability in one's life. Saturday is the day which is ruled by Saturn, and it is called Shanivar in Hindi or Sanskrit. This Shanivar is also called as Sthirvar. Sthir means stability, and it is a very good day for Mahurtas, especially if one wants to start some work where he requires stability. Then Saturday is a very good day, especially like if one wants to move into new houses or want to start a new venture which requires stability, and one wants permanency, then it's a good day to start that work. When Saturn is well placed in one's birth chart, it gives one gyan, dhyan, and is good for sadhana. It brings a good amount of spiritual growth if one is ready for it. Also, it gives a good position in life, and generally people who have a well placed Saturn have a long life, and generally they are honest. If Saturn is ill placed in one's birth chart, it brings lots of troubles, problems, and generally delays things. Besides, it brings in disappointments and difficulties in one's life. It can also give diseases, but generally Saturn is not a killer. It doesn't kill a person. If we talk about its friends, then Mercury and Venus are friends of Saturn, and Venus is Param Mitra of Shani. For Lagnas of Venus, which are Taurus and Libra, like we call them Rishabh and Tula in Sanskrit, Saturn acts like a Rajyog Karka planet and is generally a beneficial planet for these Lagnas. Now we will talk about effect of Saturn being placed in different houses. Saturn in Lagna. So when Saturn is placed in Lagna, it would aspect the third house, the 7th house, and the 10th house. Now there are two scenarios when Saturn is placed in the Lagna. The first case, when Saturn is well placed here. By being well placed, I mean that it can be in its exaltation, its own Rashi, or in its friend's sign, or if it is aspected by benefics. So if Saturn is well placed in the Lagna, it is generally considered good, as it gives order and structure, I'll say. It means that the person's life is ordered and structured. He is very disciplined and he is hardworking. Now, here as Saturn aspects the third house, so these people generally gain success in life through, you can say, self-effort and hard work. A well-placed Saturn when aspecting the 10th house gives an excellent career to the native, and what I have seen in practice is that generally these people, they keep working. I mean, I'll say they'll never retire in life. They keep working till the end, which is very good. They are good with their partners, with their companions. Now, if this Saturn is not well placed, then these people are generally lazy and they don't have very good relations with their co-bonds, because third house represents co-bonds also. So if this Saturn is not well placed here, its aspect would destroy the significations of the third house, and generally these people, they don't have good relations with their co-bonds. Also, they don't maintain good relations with their companions, their wife. Plus, malefic Saturn aspecting the 7th house generally delays the marriage of these natives. The Saturn aspecting the 10th house, if this malefic Saturn is aspecting the 10th house, it generally creates problems in the career of the native. They don't get along well with their colleagues in office, and they have, you can say, like a serving attitude in life. They like to work under someone, and you can say they lose that entrepreneurship in them. They don't take initiatives and generally would submit to orders of the others. Saturn in 2nd house. Now, when Saturn is placed in the 2nd house, it would aspect the 4th house, the 8th house and the 11th house. What I have seen in practice is that when Saturn is placed in the 2nd house, it generally, you can say, separates the native from the family. It doesn't mean that there is a permanent separation, but as Saturn, when placed in 2nd house, makes the native have interest in financial aspect of life. So generally these people, they want to earn money, but there is a delay. So to earn money, they generally have to work hard, and they separate from their family. Saturn's aspect on 4th house generally makes the mother of the native very strict, and you can say that the environment in which these individuals are brought up is generally strict. If there is aspect of other malefics also on the 4th house, then the mother might have health issues also. Now, as Saturn is aspecting the 8th house, so generally these people who have Saturn in the 2nd house have long life. Besides, Saturn being placed here gives them interest in occult and astrology, these kind of subjects, because of its aspect on the 8th house. See, Saturn is the Karka for the 8th house. So when Saturn is aspecting the 8th house, it would bring out the positive side of the 8th house, which is occult, which is astrology, which is things which are hidden under the ground. These people, what I have seen is that when Saturn is placed in the 2nd house, and if this Saturn relates to the profession of the native, that means if it is in any way connected to the 10th house, so then these people can be in the profession of, you can say, jewelry or stones or even mining. All these are positive aspects of the 8th house. Saturn, as it is aspecting the 11th house also, so it can give gains to the native. But one thing which I have seen is in practice is that when Saturn is placed in 2nd house, it generally delays the money making for these individuals. As the Saturn matures at the age of 36th year, so generally these people, they make good money only after the age of 36th year. 3rd house. When Saturn is placed in the 3rd house, it would aspect the 5th house, the 9th house, and the 12th house. See, being placed in 3rd house, the Saturn here would make the individual very creative. This combination can be seen in horoscopes of lots of journalists and people who are into writing. Another thing which I have seen when people have Saturn in the 3rd house, and if it is well placed, then these people have good organizational skills. This is due to the reason of its aspect on the 5th house here. Also, Saturn here makes one travel for work. These people are generally, you can say, interested in traveling, and they love to travel. Now, this Saturn here, as it is placed in the 6th house from 10th house, so generally these people, they cannot work under somebody. This Saturn here, it makes the individuals independent. They want to work on their own. These people, another thing which I have seen is that they are not very good to work in a team. They generally like to work alone. Besides, Saturn here doesn't allow these individuals to have a good relationship with their friends and their siblings. As this Saturn aspects the 9th house also, so it's generally not very good, I'll say, for higher education. And these people, they also don't have a very good relationship with their father, because father represents the 9th house. So they kind of, you can say, stay away from their father. They don't gel well with him. And this can be the case, especially if Sun is also afflicted in the chart, or if Sun sits with Saturn here or is aspected by Saturn. Aspect on the 12th house gives them interest in spiritual things. But this Saturn here, it would delay their spiritual pursuits. I mean, it won't allow them to get into spiritual activities very early, in spite of their interest in spirituality. Saturn, when placed in the fourth house would aspect the sixth house, the 10th house, and the Lagna. See, when Saturn is placed in the fourth house, it affects the sukh of the individual. What we have seen in practice is that when Saturn is there in the fourth house, then these natives, even from their childhood, they get a very strict environment at the house. Generally, their mother is very strict and they lead a very disciplined life. This is what I have seen in practice. Because of the placement in the Sukh Sthan, like I told you, it affects the Sukh. Generally, these people face hardships at their house. Now, as it is aspecting the sixth house, so these people, they are generally disease free, I'll say, because aspect of Saturn on the sixth house, it makes them very strong. So their immunity is good and generally they are disease free. They have very few enemies. And basically the karkas of the sixth house, they get enhanced. So you get the positive results from the sixth house. Unless and until this Saturn is afflicted, then the individual would get obstructions and diseases and lots of problems. But if Saturn is well placed here, it's generally it is good for the sixth house things. Now, because of its aspect on the 10th house, these people, they are generally very disciplined in life and are hardworking and do good in their profession. But as this is Saturn here, so the success is not, you can say it won't come to them very easily. So because Shani moves very slowly, like as we discussed in the beginning of this lecture. So the success takes time, I will say, to come to them. But whenever it comes, it stays with them. Saturn's aspect on the Lagna makes them tall, dark, and generally they have, you can say, a mature look in them. Saturn in 5th house. Now, when Saturn is sitting in the 5th house, it would aspect the 7th house, the 11th house, and the 2nd house. Now, as Saturn is sitting in the 5th house, so it would delay the marriage because of its aspect on the 7th house, and even delay the birth of children because of the placement in the 5th house. One more thing is there, that as Saturn is sitting in the 5th house, it generally blocks the creativity of the individual, because 5th house also gives creativity. One thing is there, if this Saturn is placed with the creative planets like Mercury or Venus, then it's a different thing, and then the individuals are very creative. But if it is sitting alone, or if it's in a bad sign, then the creativity of the individual is blocked. Now, because of its aspect on the 7th house, like I told, that it would delay the marriage. But one thing is there, if this Saturn is good here, if it is well placed, then the native gets a very mature and an intelligent person as his spouse. Now, as this Saturn is aspecting the 11th house, and is placed in the 5th house, which is the house of speculation also. So if this Saturn is well placed here, then the native gains money through speculation and you can say stock market also. In this case, it is good actually for speculation, and they are very good with speculative gains, and they make good money in these kind of businesses. But if this Saturn is not well placed here, then it can create problems with money also. Because of its aspect on the 2nd house, it is generally not good for, you can say, speech of the native. They don't speak a lot, and generally you can see that they are one of the quiet person in the family. Even the family life of the individual is affected because of this aspect here, and they generally not get along very well with their family members. Saturn in 6th house. Now when Saturn is placed in the 6th house, it would aspect the 8th house, the 12th house and the 3rd house. See, Saturn placed in the 6th house is one of the best position for Shani. Here Saturn destroys all the enemies, the depths, the obstructions, diseases, all the indications of the 6th house, they are destroyed here, and this Saturn is generally very good for them, for the individuals. Shani in the 6th house you can generally find in the chart of lawyers, doctors, because Saturn in the 6th house helps one make money from the indications of the 6th house, which is diseases, which is debts, which is enemies. So people who are into professions like medical line or litigation, they have a strong Saturn in their 6th house. Now as this Saturn is aspecting the 8th house, so the karkas of the 8th house are also enhanced. So we get similar results like we spoke when Saturn was in the 2nd house. So similarly, person is interested in occult, in hidden things. So all those indications of Saturn aspecting the 8th house, which I spoke about when Saturn is in Shani, is in 2nd house, same indications you can get from this placement. Now, aspect on the 12th house here is generally not good for things related to the 12th house like spirituality and all. But when a person is in his profession in medicine or in litigation, then person can make money from losses of others. So that positive thing would come from this 12th house here. Now as it's aspecting the 3rd house also, so in this case person gets support from his subordinates, from his siblings, and generally things which he does is through self-effort. Now 6th house Saturn won't allow the native to do his own business. This combination is generally good, but it's not good for it's not good to make the person a businessman. It is generally good if he works for somebody. Saturn in 7th house. See, Saturn in 7th house is one of the best positions for Shani. The reason being is that Saturn attains Digbal in the 7th house. Digbal means directional strength. So being directionally strong, all the positive aspects of Saturn gets enhanced, and even whichever houses this Saturn aspects, it is also positively influenced, but you can say with a Saturn touch. So the positivity of these houses would be enhanced, but will have the order and structure and discipline of the seventh house, of Shani. So now when Saturn is placed in the seventh house, it aspects the ninth house, the Lagna, and the fourth house. So this Saturn would enhance the properties of all these houses of the ninth house, the Lagna, and the fourth house. Besides, this Saturn enhances the seventh house also. But one thing is there, for these natives, they generally don't get married very early when Saturn is placed in the seventh house, and the marriage of these natives is generally based on principles and, you can say, realistic ideas. So this marriage is more like, and you can say, like a partnership, not like marriage based only on you can say emotions, but generally they do very good in this field. The marriage is generally very good. They are also very good with partnerships, these individuals who have Saturn in their seventh house, and because of its aspect on the fourth house, these people are generally good with you can say real estate also. They can be very calculative and invest in the right place to make money. Now, as the Saturn is aspecting the ninth house also, so ninth house properties are also enhanced. Their father may be disciplined and strict, but would be beneficial for the individual. Also, this Saturn teaches these natives higher principles of life, like wisdom, and even is good for higher education. The aspect on fourth house, like I told you, it is good for real estate, but is also good for mother also, if provided, I mean, if this fourth house is not afflicted, or moon is not afflicted. But otherwise, if the house is strong and the Lord is strong, then this Saturn would enhance the properties of the fourth house. And generally mother is strict and disciplined, but she would be like an entrepreneur. So overall, this seventh house Saturn is generally good. In the eighth house. Now, Saturn in the eighth house can be good or can even be bad. It all depends on the placement of the Saturn, like in which Rashi it is placed, or with which planets it is there. Basically, you can say, the PSC of Saturn here. Because if this 8th house Saturn is well placed, then it can be very good. But if this Saturn here is not well placed, if it is afflicted, then it can create lot of troubles for the native. But one thing is there, that this 8th house Saturn will give the native a long life, because Shani is the Karka for the 8th house. These people who have Saturn in the 8th house are generally good with research and occult, etc., the things which are hidden. Even in their profession, like if you see, there's Saturn is aspecting the 10th house here. So even in their profession, they do good if the profession relates to research or occult or digging out things. Digging out can be related to scientists also, even in the field of medical sciences, because there a lot of research and skills are involved. Aspect of Shani on the 10th house generally brings out, you can say, organizational skills in the native. His organizational skills are enhanced and they are able to manage big organizations very easily. The aspect of Saturn on the second house here is generally not very good, and it can separate the native from the immediate family. Even there can be some secrets related to the family, because here Shani is aspecting from the 8th house, which is house of secrets, house of hidden things. Saturn's 10th aspect is on the 5th house, which is house of children. So generally, people who have Saturn in the 8th house, they can have delayed progeny, because Shani can delay the birth of child. But if there is not delay related to children, still these people, they can have a lot of, you can say, responsibilities of the children. They would be responsible for a lot of things, and would generally, you can say, the upbringing of the children would be brought with a lot of care, and it would be generally good. 9th house. See, when Saturn is placed in the 9th house, it would aspect the 11th house, the 3rd house, and the 6th house. Now, being placed in the 9th house, it is generally not good for the father of the native. Generally, these individuals, these people, they don't maintain good relations with their father. But this Shani in the 9th house is good for spiritual things, like these people generally like to read scriptures, and they generally like to, you can say, argue or discuss spiritual things and even wisdom in public. So 9th house Saturn is generally good for lawyers, good for judges, and good for preachers, because these people generally like to preach what they have learnt in their life. Aspect on 3rd house would generally make them write their experiences, their teachings, and they can even preach people through their writings. The aspect on the 11th house is generally good for gains, and people who have Shani in the 9th house, they make good money in their life. The aspect on the 6th house is again good, as it makes these individuals disease free and they don't have problems in their life. And in 10th house, Saturn in 10th house is also a very good position for Shani. If this Saturn is well placed in the 10th house, then it can give excellent, you can say, results to the native. In being placed in the 10th house, this Saturn brings professionalism and order and structure in the career of the native. These people, they generally do very good in professions where a lot of you can say public dealing is required. So they can be good in administration fields. Also, if these individuals are in business, then they can be good in businesses related to metals or minings. As this Saturn is aspecting the 12th house also from the house of profession. So if this Shani is anyway connected to, you can say, the 6th house here, then these people can be in profession of being lawyers, doctors, or even in police, and can serve in jail or hospitals, because 12th house represents hospitals and jail also. Also, as this Saturn is connected to the 12th house from 10th house, so there can be gains from abroad also. Saturn's aspect on the 4th house can again can give them a strict environment at their house, but this Shani, as in 10th house, it's in a Upchaya Sthan, it's strong, so this Saturn can give them gains from real estate also here. Although the native can have differences of opinion with his mother. Now its 10th aspect is on the 7th house here, so this would, you can say, definitely delay the marriage of the native. And the reason for delay is generally due to the profession, because people who have Shani in the 10th house, they are very much engrossed and very much professional about their work. So they don't want to neglect their work, which can cause a delay in their marriage. In 11th house. Now again, Saturn in 11th house is an excellent position for Shani. Being posited here, Shani gives gains, and I'll mark this gains, because being placed here, Shani gives nothing but gains. It's an excellent position for Shani, as it is aspecting the 5th house also. So the natives who have Shani in their 11th house, they are very good with speculation, and they use their speculative instincts, you can say, even in their businesses. So whatever decisions they take, it gives them gains. I mean, there is nothing much to talk about Shani in 11th house, because whatever they invest in, whatever they do in life, they get gains out of it. One reason for this is because Shani, if you see the Kalpurush Kundli, the 11th house, which is Kumbha or the Aquarius, is ruled by Shani. So Saturn's placement in 11th house would give that kind of strength to Shani here. So that's why it's a very good position for Shani. Now, being in 11th house, it aspects the Lagna and the 8th house also. So aspecting the Lagna, it would give a, you can say, a mature outlook to the individual, and they are very mature in their dealings. Also, the aspect on the 8th house would give them a long life, which is generally disease free. So it's a very good position for Shani here. It is like a win-win position. 12th house. See, generally malefics are considered good in those thanas, but Shani being placed in the 12th house is generally not considered good, and it gives malefic results. Shani being placed in 12th house gives depression to the native, and it you can say it gives a lot of mental stress. There can even be loss of property and family wealth. So I generally don't consider it a very good position. Shani is Karka for 12th house. So generally it gives, you can say, a kind of spiritual inclination to these natives. But here Shani would generally delay the spiritual growth of these individuals if the Saturn is not very well placed. If this Shani is placed in bad signs, then these natives, they are generally lazy by nature. Shani aspects the second house, the 6th house, and the 9th house when it is placed in the 12th house. So generally it is not good for family life of the native, and it even delays making a family. One thing is there that it aspects the 6th house. So generally these people, they are good when it comes to working with their enemies. They can easily compete with them. Plus these people can be disease free and debt free. Also, aspect on the 9th house doesn't give them a very good relationship with their father. But one thing is there, if this Saturn is well placed in the 12th house, then these people can generally, you can say, they can go abroad for studies, or they can even be working in an hospital or a jail setup and make good money out of these things. With this, we finish this series of Saturn's placement in different houses. And if you like this video, please subscribe to my channel to view more of my videos. Thank you.